My son Logan and his wife Brielle left for a business trip and asked me to stay at their house to watch Brielle's mom, Evelyn, who everybody believed was in a coma after a bad fall. But the second their car rolled out of the driveway, Evelyn's eyes popped wide open. She grabbed my arm so hard it stung, and what she whispered next made my whole body go ice cold. My name is Catherine. I'm 72 years old, and I'm telling you right now, I lived long enough to think I could spot trouble from a mile away. I thought I'd already survived the big heartbreaks, the kind that change you, the kind that teach you to keep your expectations low so you don't get blindsided. I was wrong. It started the Monday before, when Logan called me like he was ordering something instead of talking to his mother. "Mom," he said, and his voice sounded too controlled, too flat. "Brielle and I have to fly to Miami for work. It's last minute. Her mom had another bad spell. We can't leave her alone. Can you stay over for a few days? Another bad spell." That phrase stuck in my head. Evelyn was supposedly in a coma. A coma doesn't do spells. But I didn't call it out. I didn't want to start a fight. And if I'm being honest, a part of me felt wanted, needed. Like maybe my son remembered I existed for a reason other than birthdays and holidays. "How many days?" I asked. "3, he said. "Maybe 4. Then he paused, like he was reading a list off his phone. "The nurse comes twice a day, morning and evening. Everything's labeled. You don't have to do much. Just be there in case something happens. Just be there." That wasn't help take care of her. That was be present. Like my main job was to exist in the house. I should have asked, if it's that serious, why not hire overnight care? Logan and Brielle had money. Their house was huge. Their cars were new. Their vacations looked expensive. Hiring someone to sit through the night wouldn't break them. But I didn't ask because Logan has always been distant. Even when he was a kid, he wasn't cuddly. He wasn't the kind of little boy who threw his arms around your neck and told you he loved you like it was easy. He was polite, sure, smart, quiet, but emotional warmth, that was rare. It was like I always had to earn it. As he got older, it got worse. He stopped calling just to talk. He stopped dropping by. If I asked how he was, I got a short answer. If I asked when I'd see him, I got, "We'll figure it out." If I tried to push, he'd hit me with, "Mom, don't make it weird." So for years, I told myself the same lie a lot of mothers tell themselves. Some kids are just built that way. They still love you. They're just not expressive. And then he married Brielle. Brielle was the kind of woman who could walk into a room and make people feel like she was doing them a favor just by being there. Always perfectly dressed, always smiling, but her smile never touched her eyes. Her eyes stayed sharp, like she was scanning you, measuring what you were worth. After the wedding, it felt like Logan didn't just drift away. It felt like somebody pulled him away, like a leash tightened. Sometimes I'd call and Brielle would answer his phone. Not hello, more like Logan's busy. Sometimes I'd text him and she'd respond for him, like she was his assistant. It bothered me, but I swallowed it. I didn't want to be that mother-in-law. I didn't want to push Logan farther away. And I definitely didn't want to give Brielle a reason to paint me as dramatic. So when Logan asked me to stay at their house and just be there, I said yes. Wednesday morning, I packed a small suitcase and drove across town. Their neighborhood was one of those places where everything looks picture perfect. Fresh mulch, trimmed lawns, little flags by the mailbox. The kind of place that makes you think nothing bad could ever happen behind those front doors. Logan and Brielle's house was big, modern, shiny. It looked like it belonged in a magazine, and it always made me feel like I didn't belong. Like if I set my purse down wrong, an alarm would go off. Brielle opened the door with that bright, fake friendly smile. "Oh my gosh, Catherine," she said, voice sweet as syrup. "Thank you so much for coming. I don't even know what we'd do without you." Logan stood behind her, already dressed for the airport, phone in hand, tapping the screen like he couldn't stand still. "We've got 2 hours," he said. "Nurse comes at 8 in the morning and 5 in the evening. The med schedule's on the fridge. Emergency numbers are there too." "No, how are you, Mom?" "No, thanks for doing this. Just instructions." Brielle slid her arm through mine like we were close friends and guided me down the hallway. "You know," she said, lowering her voice like she was sharing something intimate. "Mom's been really quiet lately. The doctors say she's stable, but we just can't leave her alone." Quiet lately. Like Evelyn used to be chatty. Like there had been any lately in a coma. We stopped at the spare bedroom. They'd turned it into a home care setup. Not a full hospital room, but enough to make it look official. A hospital bed with rails, an oxygen concentrator humming, a feeding pump, a simple monitor that beeped if her pulse or oxygen dipped. The kind of equipment you can rent through home health services. The kind of thing that convinces anyone walking in that this person is truly helpless. Evelyn lay there, still as a stone, gray hair brushed neat, lips lightly tinted, like somebody wanted her to look rested instead of sick. Her hands rested on top of the blanket like someone placed them there. Brielle leaned in toward the bed, put on her soft voice. "She hasn't moved in months," she whispered. "Sometimes I talk to her anyway. Like maybe she hears me somewhere deep down. But the doctors say it's unlikely." Her voice sounded caring. Her face didn't. The way Brielle looked down at her mom wasn't love. It was annoyance. Like Evelyn was an unpaid bill that wouldn't go away. Logan gave the bed rail a little tap, like he was checking if it was sturdy. "We'll call tonight," he said. "Mom, thanks again." He kissed my cheek quick, barely a touch. Then he and Brielle grabbed their suitcases and rolled them across the shiny floor. The front door closed with a clean little click. And just like that, the house went quiet. Not peaceful quiet, empty quiet, the kind that makes you notice everything. The fridge humming, the oxygen machine whispering, the faint steady beep from Evelyn's monitor. I stood there in the hallway for a second with my suitcase, letting the silence settle on me like dust. Something in my gut felt wrong. But I told myself I was tired, that I was overthinking, that I was being a nervous old lady in a fancy house. I put my suitcase in the guest room, washed my hands, and went to the kitchen. On the fridge was a neat care station. Brielle had taped up a printed schedule, color-coded. Nurse times, med times, care notes, emergency contacts. It looked professional, almost too professional. I stared at it longer than I needed to, because the more organized it looked, the more it felt like a performance. Like somebody wanted a paper trail. Like somebody wanted the house to look prepared for witnesses. I went back to Evelyn's room because I didn't know what else to do. I adjusted the blanket where it had shifted, smoothed the fabric, pulled it up near her shoulder like you do for someone sleeping. Then I reached and gently touched her forehead, just to check if she felt warm. The moment my fingers touched her skin, Evelyn's eyes snapped open. Not slow, not groggy, wide and sharp. I jumped back so hard my hips slammed into the chair. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might crack a rib. Before I could scream, Evelyn's hand shot up and grabbed my forearm. Hard. Her grip stung, like she was hanging onto the last thread of her life. Her voice came out rough, but clear. "Don't scream." I froze. My mouth was open, but no sound came out. Evelyn's eyes flicked to the upper corner of the room. I followed her gaze. There was a small black dot near the smoke detector, something I would have ignored any other day. But now, with her staring at it like it was a loaded gun, I felt my skin go cold. "They checked the cameras," she whispered. My stomach dropped. "Evelyn, I breathed, barely making sound. You're awake. She swallowed, face tightening like her throat hurt. Sometimes, she whispered, when the drugs don't hit me all the way. When my body fights it, I get minutes, not hours. Minutes, drugs. That word hit me like a slap. My hands started shaking so badly I had to grip the chair to stay steady. My phone was in my pocket. For half a second, my brain screamed, call 911, right now. But the cameras. Evelyn squeezed my arm again. Listen to me, Catherine, she whispered. You cannot trust your son, and you sure as hell can't trust his wife. Everything inside me tried to reject that sentence. My mind wanted to bounce it off like it didn't make sense. What are you talking about? I whispered. Her eyes got wet, but her voice stayed steady. They want everyone to think I'm in a coma, she said, because that's the only way their plan works. What plan? I mouthed. Evelyn's lips barely moved as she whispered. They've been drugging me. Brielle gives me injections. She tells the nurse it's prescribed. It isn't. It knocks me out so I can't move or talk when anyone's around. The room tilted. I actually had to sit down because my knees felt like rubber. No, I whispered. Why would they? Money, Evelyn said without hesitation. They're stealing from me. I stared at her, waiting for her eyes to glaze over, waiting for confusion. But she wasn't confused. She was terrified and furious. They've been moving my money around, she continued, draining accounts, forging paperwork. They think I can't hear anything, so they talk right in front of me. My throat tightened. How do you hear if you're drugged? Because sometimes I can't move, but I can still hear, she whispered. And they get cocky. They brag. They argue. They plan. My fingers went numb. I wanted to throw up. How much? I whispered. Evelyn's jaw clenched. Hundreds of thousands, she said, and my house is being sold. I felt my chest tighten like a band was being pulled around it. Logan would never do that. I whispered automatically because my brain was desperate for something safer than the truth. Evelyn's eyes held mine. Your son is the one handling the paperwork, she whispered. Brielle handles the drugs. Logan handles the money. My heart pounded in my ears. I couldn't think straight. Evelyn's eyelids fluttered like she was fighting heaviness. I don't have long, she whispered. The dose she gave me before they left, it's wearing back in. I leaned closer. What do you need me to do? Evelyn squeezed my arm again. Urgent. Act normal, she whispered. If you freak out, they'll check the cameras and they'll know something changed. I swallowed hard and forced myself to nod. And Catherine, she whispered, eyes suddenly sharper. They didn't ask you to come here to help. I felt a chill in my bones. Then why? Her voice went even lower. Because they needed you here, she whispered. They need a witness. That sentence landed like a brick. A witness for what? I stared at her, and my mouth moved before my brain could stop it. For when you... I couldn't finish the sentence. Evelyn blinked once, slow. For when they make it look like I declined, she whispered. For when I die. My stomach dropped so hard I felt dizzy. And right when the meaning hit me, Evelyn's eyes flicked to the hallway, and her grip loosened. Catherine, she whispered fast. Listen. Her voice faltered. Her eyelids sank halfway. I panicked. Evelyn, stay with me. She forced her eyes back open for one last moment. They're going to start soon, she whispered. When they come back, they're building records. They're setting it up. You can't let them use you. Then her eyes slid shut and her hand went limp on my arm, like she'd never moved at all. In seconds, she looked exactly like the coma patient I'd been told about. I sat there frozen, staring at her face, trying to tell if she was truly out again or pretending. My heart was pounding so hard it made my hands shake. That's when I heard a sound from the other side of the door. A tiny electronic chirp, like a device waking up. I glanced toward the corner of the ceiling again, at that little black dot, and I realized something that made my throat go dry. I wasn't alone in that room. Somebody was watching. I stood up slowly, forcing my face into a calm expression even though my insides were screaming. I stepped out of the room like nothing happened, like I was just checking on her. I walked to the kitchen, and the second I turned the corner, my legs nearly gave out. I grabbed the countertop to steady myself. Okay, Catherine, I told myself, think. If Evelyn was telling the truth of my son and his wife were drugging this woman and stealing from her, then calling the police with nothing but my story would get me nowhere. Especially if there were cameras, recordings, and paperwork that backed their version. Evelyn was right. We needed proof. I looked at the fridge, at Brielle's neat printed schedule, the taped notes, the clean little care station. And suddenly it didn't look helpful anymore. It looked like a stage set, a prop for a story they wanted everyone to believe. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my phone on the tile floor. It clacked loud enough to make me jump. I snatched it up and held it to my chest like it could calm my heartbeat. I walked back toward Evelyn's room, forcing myself to breathe slow. I cracked the door open. Evelyn lay perfectly still. The monitor beeped. The oxygen machine hummed, and for a second, I wondered if I'd imagined everything. Then I noticed something that made the hair on my arms rise. A tiny red mark on the inside of her forearm, fresh, like a needle. I backed away from the bed, heart racing, and shut the door softly. That was when I decided I was going to look. I was going to find whatever they were hiding. Because if I didn't, Evelyn was going to die, and I was going to be the sweet little witness who helped them get away with it. I started with the safe place everyone hides stuff, the office. Logan had a little home office off the hallway. The door was closed, but not locked. I stepped inside and felt like I was trespassing in my own son's life. Desk spotless, laptop gone, printer paper stacked perfectly. No family photos. No mess. Nothing personal. That alone felt wrong. Most people have something. A framed picture, a pen cup, a random receipt. This room looked like it existed for one purpose: work and paperwork. I opened drawers slowly, listening for any sound in the house. My ears were so sensitive I could hear the ice maker cycle. Top drawer, pens, paper clips, sticky notes. Second drawer, folders. Labels. I flipped through tax documents, mortgage stuff, insurance. Then I saw a folder labeled Evelyn Med. My stomach clenched. I didn't pull it out right away. I stood there staring at the label like my brain needed permission. Then I slid it out and opened it. Inside were printed doctor notes, medication instructions, and a care plan. It looked legit at first glance, but something about it felt off. The formatting was inconsistent. The letterhead looked slightly blurry, like it had been copied and recopied. And the doctor's signature at the bottom was the same on every page, like it was stamped. I took pictures of everything. Then I put the folder back exactly where it was. Because if they were watching cameras, I couldn't give them a reason to rewind footage and see me snooping. I stepped into the hallway and froze. A car engine outside. For half a second, my heart stopped. Then the engine kept going. Probably a neighbor. But it was enough to remind me reminder number one. Catherine, you are not a spy. You are a 72-year-old woman in a house with cameras, trying not to get caught by your own family. I went back to Evelyn's room and sat by the bed, trying to look normal in case someone checked footage. I held her hand lightly, not squeezing hard, just resting my fingers there. And I whispered so quietly it was barely breath. I'm going to help you. Her hand didn't move, but I swear to you, I felt the tiniest pressure back. Like a faint tap, like confirmation. Then the house door chime went off. My whole body jerked. Nurse, right on schedule. I walked to the door and opened it. Miss, Rivera stood there with her bag and her calm, professional face. Mid-40s, kind eyes, tired but steady. The kind of nurse who's seen a lot and still chooses kindness anyway. "Hi," she said. "You must be Catherine." "That's me," I said, forcing a smile. She stepped inside and glanced around like she'd done this 100 times, which she probably had. "How's she been since this morning?" "Quiet," I said carefully. "No changes I noticed." "Miss?" Rivera nodded and walked straight to Evelyn's room. I followed, trying to keep my breathing steady. She checked vitals, looked at the monitor, listened to her breathing. For a moment, "Miss." Rivera's brow furrowed. My stomach flipped. Then she relaxed slightly. "Vitals are stable," she said. "Oxygen is okay. Heart rate's a little low, but not alarming." "A little low." I heard Evelyn's whisper in my head. "They dose me before the nurse comes, miss." Rivera looked at me. "Any extra meds given outside the schedule?" My mouth went dry so fast it felt like cotton. "No," I said quickly, then forced myself to slow down so I didn't sound guilty. "Just what's labeled." I followed the sheet. Ms. Rivera studied me for a second, and I swore my soul left my body. Like she could tell I was lying even though I wasn't. Then she nodded. "Okay," she said. "It's hard when you're not used to this. You're doing fine." She wrote notes in her chart, adjusted the blanket gently, and checked the feeding pump. Watching her handle Evelyn with real care made me feel even sicker, because it meant Ms. Rivera truly believed the story, which meant Logan and Brielle had fooled everyone. Before Ms. Rivera left, she paused at the doorway. "If anything feels off tonight, breathing changes, skin color, any sudden shift, call me," she said. "Even if it seems small." "I will," I promised. After she left, I locked the front door and leaned my forehead against it for a second, breathing like I'd just run a mile. Then I went back to the kitchen and stared at the fridge where the care station was taped up. And that's when it hit me. If Ms. Rivera was already noticing low heart rate and stable, but on day one with me there, then Brielle's drugging wasn't subtle, which meant Brielle was either sloppy or she was getting ready. I walked back to Evelyn's room, closed the door behind me, and leaned close to her ear. "You said they need a witness," I whispered. "Tell me what to do next." Evelyn's eyelids fluttered, just barely, and then her lips moved. The faintest whisper, "Closet. Safe for tonight." My stomach dropped, because I knew exactly whose closet she meant, Logan's. And if I went into my son's bedroom, into his private space, and got caught on camera, I wouldn't just be overstepping. I'd be stepping directly into whatever nightmare they were building. But Evelyn's hand twitched under the blanket, like she was trying to hold on. And I realized something else, something that made my chest tighten with fear and anger. If I didn't do it, nobody would. And by the time Logan and Brielle came home, it would be too late. So I sat there, staring at my son's hallway, listening to the quiet beep of the monitor, and planning the one thing I never thought I'd plan in my whole life. How to sneak around my own child's house like I was the criminal. And I still didn't know the worst part yet. Because that night, when I finally opened Logan's closet, I found something that made me understand exactly why they wanted me there. And once you hear what it was, you're gonna understand too. I waited until the house settled into that late night quiet. The kind where every little noise sounds 10 times louder than it should. The kind where you can hear the ice maker crack, the air vent hum, the floorboards whisper under your socks. I'm not a sneaky person. I'm 72. I'm the woman who still says excuse me when nobody's in the aisle. I'm not built for creeping around like some teenager trying to sneak out. But that night, I moved through Logan's house like I was scared the walls would tattletale. I checked the hallway first. No lights. No movement. Then I looked up at the ceiling corners the way Evelyn had shown me, like I'd suddenly become a person who knows what to look for. Once you see one camera, you start seeing places a camera could be. Smoke detectors, corner mounts, little black dots that weren't there in normal houses. I kept my face neutral, even though my heart was racing, because if those cameras recorded, they recorded everything. And I kept reminding myself, if somebody ever watches this footage, they're going to see what my face says. So I took slow breaths and made my body move like I belonged doing whatever I was doing. I walked into Logan and Brielle's bedroom like I was looking for extra blankets. Their room was as staged as the rest of the house. The bed was made to perfectly. Pillows stacked like they'd never been used. The air smelled like Brielle's perfume, sweet and sharp, like fancy flowers with a blade hidden inside. Logan's closet was a sliding door. I eased it open, inch by inch, so it wouldn't make that loud track scrape sound. Inside, everything was arranged like a store display. Shirts evenly spaced. Shoes lined up like soldiers. No clutter. No randomness. Like Logan and Brielle were allergic to leaving evidence of being human. Evelyn had whispered safe, not look around. Not check drawers. Safe. I scanned the top shelf first. Shoe boxes. Folded sweaters. A small plastic bin with winter gloves. Then I saw it. A black metal safe tucked behind tissue boxes, like it was trying to hide in plain sight. My mouth went dry. I just stared at it for a second. Because opening your son's safe feels like crossing a line you can't uncross. It's not like borrowing sugar. It's not like checking his mail. It's a hard line. But then I pictured Evelyn whispering they need a witness for when I die. And the anger pushed me forward. My hands were shaking so bad I almost couldn't pull the safe out. I set it on the closet floor and crouched, listening. Silence. I punched in the code Evelyn had hinted at. She hadn't given it to me outright, but she'd said it in a way that clicked in my head. I'd heard Logan use the same numbers on his phone for years. It wasn't even clever. It was a lazy code. The kind people use when they think nobody will ever dare try. The safe beeped once, then clicked. My heart hammered. I opened it, and I swear, the air in the closet felt colder. Inside were stacks of paperwork, neat, organized, labeled. It wasn't messy like a person hiding something in a panic. It was organized like a person hiding something they planned to use. There were documents with Evelyn's name at the top. Bank forms, power of attorney paperwork, authorization pages, medical release forms, and on so many of them, Evelyn's signature. Only the signature looked wrong. Not wildly wrong, not cartoon forgery wrong, but wrong in a way that made my stomach turn because I've seen enough old folks' handwriting to know the difference between a natural signature and one someone practiced. These looked erased. Like someone copied her signature from an old document and practiced until it was close enough to fool a quick glance. Then I found the bank transfer confirmations. Big amounts. Not $50 here, $200 there. Thousands. Tens of thousands. A chunk that made my eyes sting because I thought I misread it at first. $78,000. Another page. $52,500. Then a printout showing a withdrawal from a retirement account with a number at the bottom that made my throat close up. $310,000 moved. I put my hand over my mouth to keep myself from making a sound. It wasn't just Evelyn being paranoid. It wasn't just family drama. This was real. My own son was part of it. I took my phone out with shaking hands and started taking pictures. Every page, every signature, every bank header. I made sure the dates were in frame. I made sure the amounts were readable. I didn't just photograph the interesting parts because I knew if this ever became evidence, it had to show context. Halfway through, my phone buzzed. I almost screamed. It was a low buzz, but it felt like a gunshot. I froze, staring at the screen. A text. From Logan. My chest tightened like a fist. The text read, "Everything okay?" It was almost midnight. Why was he checking on me from out of state? My hands went ice cold. Was he watching the cameras? Was he seeing me in his closet right now? I forced myself to breathe through my nose. Slow. I didn't answer right away. I needed to think. If I replied too fast, it might look like I was already awake and on my phone. If I replied too slow, it might look like I was hiding something. So I waited a minute. Just one. Then I typed, "All good. Quiet night. Just grabbed an extra blanket." I hit send and held my breath. No reply. I put the phone face down and kept photographing. Then I found the folder that made my blood run colder than the bank forms. It was labeled in Logan's neat handwriting. Next steps. My stomach flipped. I opened it. Inside was printed information about end-of-life care for coma patients. Articles. Checklists. A printed page that said things like expected decline signs and respiratory changes and organ failure timeline. And then, tucked behind that, a page of notes. Not printed. Handwritten. Brielle's handwriting. It said, "Need witness present during decline. C is perfect. Reliable. Won't question. Will confirm no responsiveness. C. Catherine." My mouth went dry. My ears rang. They had written it down, like it was a plan for renovating a kitchen. I took pictures of that page so many times I probably didn't need all of them, but I couldn't stop. It felt like the one piece I needed to prove Evelyn was right about why I was here. I put everything back exactly as I found it. Every stack in the same order. Every folder aligned. I slid the safe back behind the shoe boxes. Then I stood up slowly, knees stiff, and closed the closet door. For a second, I just stood there in the bedroom, staring at their perfectly made bed, their perfectly staged life. And I felt this wave of anger so hot it almost made me dizzy. But anger doesn't keep you safe. So I forced myself to move. I went straight to Evelyn's room and shut the door behind me. I leaned close to her face and whispered, barely sound, "I found it." Evelyn didn't move at first. Then, under the blanket, her fingers tapped once against my hand, like a code. Yes. I whispered, "They wrote my name. They wrote that I'm the witness." Evelyn's eyelids fluttered. Her lips moved, but she didn't make sound yet. I waited. Finally, she whispered so quietly I almost didn't catch it. I knew. My eyes stung. "What do we do?" Evelyn's throat worked like she was fighting the heaviness. "Evidence," she whispered, more. "We need Brielle's notes." "I'll find them," I said. Evelyn's eyes opened just enough to look at me. "Be careful," she whispered. "They're watching. Always." Then her eyes slid shut again like the drug wave swallowed her. I sat in the chair beside her bed, breathing hard, listening to the monitor beep, trying to slow my heartbeat. Because now I knew something that changed everything. This wasn't just Evelyn being abused. This was planned, and I was part of it. The next morning, I woke up after what felt like 5 minutes of sleep. My body was heavy, and my brain felt foggy from stress. I shuffled into the kitchen and stared at the fridge schedule like it could tell me what to do. Nurse visit at 8. It was only 7. My hands were trembling so badly I had to wrap them around my coffee mug like a lifeline. When Ms. Rivera arrived, I forced a smile like I hadn't spent the night cracking safes and discovering my son's betrayal. "Morning," she said warmly. "How was the night?" I swallowed. "Quiet," I said. "No changes." She nodded and walked straight to Evelyn's room. I followed, trying to keep my face calm. Ms. Rivera checked the monitor, listened to Evelyn's breathing, examined her arms, and then she paused. My stomach dropped. She leaned in, looking at Evelyn's forearm. I felt my pulse in my throat. "Is that new?" Ms. Rivera asked. My mouth went dry. "What?" I croaked. She pointed gently. This little mark looks like an injection site. My hands went cold. I forced myself to think fast. If I said I don't know, it sounded suspicious. If I said Brielle does that, I could tip off the nurse, but also trigger cameras if anyone was watching. I took a breath and said, the schedule says she gets injections sometimes. The nurse before you, or Brielle. I'm not sure. I just got here yesterday, Miss. Rivera's eyes narrowed slightly. Thoughtful. HMM, she said. She checked Evelyn's other arm. There were faint marks there too. Ms. Rivera straightened and looked at the chart. Her heart rate is lower than her baseline, she said. Not dangerous, but lower. Has she been getting anything beyond what's listed? I shook my head fast, then slowed myself, because fast looks guilty. Not that I know of, I said. I followed the sheet on the fridge, Ms. Rivera's expression stayed professional, but I could tell she was thinking. Sometimes family adds supplements or something, she said, or extra sedatives thinking it helps. It can affect vitals. My throat tightened. I forced myself to sound clueless. Should I call Brielle? I asked Ms. Rivera hesitated like she was weighing something. Then she said, not yet. I'm going to document it and request the supervising physician review the med list. If it's all legit, fine. If not, we'll sort it out. My chest felt like it was going to explode. She was getting closer, and that terrified me because if Ms. Rivera got too close while Logan and Brielle were away, it might blow up in a way we couldn't control. It might trigger them to do something faster. After Ms. Rivera left, I rushed back into Evelyn's room and shut the door. I leaned close and whispered. The nurse noticed injection marks. Evelyn's eyelids fluttered. Her fingers twitched under the blanket. She whispered, barely audible. That's why they time it. What do we do? I whispered. Evelyn's lips moved slowly. Find her notes, she whispered. The log. It proves intent. I nodded even though she couldn't see it. I waited until midday. I kept moving around the house like normal, folding a blanket, wiping a counter, standing by the window like an old lady watching birds. But my brain was racing. Where would Brielle keep something like that? If she was smart, she'd keep it near the kitchen where she managed care, because she'd be in there constantly. I went to the kitchen, pretending to look for a specific mug. I opened cabinets slowly. I checked behind stacks of cookbooks, behind decorative jars. Then I saw a shelf of cookbooks that were way too clean to be used. I pulled two out, nothing. I pulled three, still nothing. Then I felt it, a slight resistance, like something behind them wasn't flush with the back wall. I slid the books to the side and reached behind. My fingers touched paper. I pulled out a thin notebook, plain cover. No label. I opened it, and my stomach dropped. It wasn't a diary. It was a log. Dates. Times. Measurements. Notes like dose increased. Subject remained unresponsive. Adjust timing before nurse visit. It said subject, not mom, not Evelyn. Subject. Like Evelyn was a lab rat. I had to clamp a hand over my mouth because the disgust came so fast I almost gagged. I took my phone out and photographed the first page, then the second, then the third. Every page was worse. One entry said, breakthrough awareness noted. Additional dose administered. Must prevent speech. Breakthrough awareness. That was Evelyn waking up. Another entry said, discuss timeline with L. Begin decline documentation after return. Need witness present. C will confirm. See again. Me again. I felt lightheaded. I sat down on the kitchen floor for a second because my knees wobbled. I wasn't crying yet, but my eyes burned like tears were trying to start. My son. My son had let his wife write me into the plan like I was a prop. I forced myself back up. I kept photographing every page. I didn't skip anything. Then I flipped near the back and found an entry that made my blood run colder than the rest. It said, "Final phase plan, increase respiratory suppressant gradually so it appears natural. Goal, failure within 10 to 14 days. Set tone with nurse, worsening breath sounds and color changes. Family narrative, tragic decline. After, cruise trip confirmed. Cruise trip." They were treating Evelyn's death like it was a project milestone before vacation. I slammed the notebook shut and held it tight, trying to breathe. Then I heard a sound that made me freeze. The front door lock beeped, like someone was unlocking it. My heart stopped. I turned my head toward the hallway, listening. Footsteps, no, silence. Maybe the system reset. Maybe it was a neighbor. Maybe I was losing my mind. But I realized something. I was holding Brielle's notebook in the middle of the kitchen. If someone walked in right now, I'd be standing there with the one thing she didn't want anyone to see. I shoved it back behind the cookbooks and slid them into place exactly how they were. My hands were shaking so hard the books clacked against each other. I stepped back and forced myself to look normal. I walked to the front door and checked the lock. Still locked. No sign of anyone. I exhaled slowly, but my body stayed tense. Cameras. Always cameras. I went to Evelyn's room and shut the door behind me again. I leaned close and whispered, "I found it." Her logbook. Evelyn's fingers tapped once under the blanket. I whispered, "It's worse than we thought. She calls you a subject." She wrote down the plan. 10 to 14 days. Slow respiratory decline. She literally wrote that I'll confirm you never woke up. Evelyn's eyelids fluttered. For a second, her eyes opened just a sliver. The look in her eyes wasn't confusion. It was fury. She whispered, "Good." Then she swallowed, and her voice got stronger for a second like adrenaline pushed through the sedation. "Catherine," she whispered, "we need them talking on record. The notebook is strong, but a confession is the nail." I nodded, whispering, "How?" Evelyn's eyes shifted toward the corner camera. "They will," she whispered. "They can't help it. They'll brag. They'll plan. Especially if they think you're cooperating." My stomach tightened. "You want me to play along?" Evelyn blinked slowly. "Yes," she whispered. "For now." I sat back in the chair, feeling sick. Playing along with my own son's plan to end a woman's life while I pretended to be clueless. It felt like swallowing poison. But Evelyn was right. If I confronted them without everything locked down, they could twist it. They could call me senile. They could say I was confused. They could say I stole things from the house. So I sat there, listening to the monitor, waiting, counting time, trying to plan. The rest of that day was torture. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped. Every time the house creaked, I thought someone was walking in. Every time I looked at the corner camera, I felt like it was staring through my skull. That night, Logan texted again. "Everything's still okay," again at a weird hour. I waited 1 minute, then replied, "All good." Nurse came. "Quiet." He responded almost immediately. "Good. We might get back earlier than planned." My blood turned to ice. Earlier. That meant less time. I ran to Evelyn's room. I leaned close, whispering they might come back early. Evelyn's hand twitched. Her eyes fluttered. She whispered, "Then we move faster." "What do we do?" I whispered. Evelyn's voice was thin but steady. "Recorders," she whispered. "Not spy stuff. Simple. Small." I swallowed. "Where?" Evelyn's eyes barely opened. "Garage," she whispered. "Behind paint cans." "A box?" My heart pounded. "You have recorders?" She managed the faintest smile. "I prepared," she whispered. "Months." I stared at her. "How?" Evelyn's voice was barely breath. "Windows," she whispered. "When Brielle thought I was gone. When she left packages. When she got careless." I nodded, even though I didn't fully understand. But I didn't have time to question it. I waited until the house was quiet again. Then I walked to the garage like I was taking out trash. The garage smelled like cardboard and gasoline and old paint. I found a stack of paint cans behind a shelf. Behind them was a small box. Inside was a tiny audio recorder and a nanny cam. Nothing crazy. Nothing spy movie. Just cheap little devices you can buy online. I grabbed them and hurried back inside. In Evelyn's room, I shut the door and leaned close. Evelyn's eyes opened just enough to see the devices. She whispered, "Set audio near living room. Another in here. They will talk." My hands shook as I placed one recorder behind a decorative plant in the living room, angled toward the couch. Another I tucked behind a tissue box in Evelyn's room, close enough to catch voices. I kept checking my face in reflective surfaces like a nervous teenager, because I was terrified my expression would give away the fact that I was hiding something. The next morning, Ms. Rivera came again. She checked vitals and frowned. "Her oxygen sat is slightly lower," she said. My stomach flipped. "She's stable though," Ms. Rivera added, "but I'm documenting everything. If she declines, we need a clear trail." Clear trail. That was exactly what Brielle wanted. After Ms. Rivera left, I whispered to Evelyn, "The nurse is building records." Just like Brielle planned. Evelyn whispered back, "Yes, that's why we need confession." Then, that afternoon, my phone rang. Logan. My heart jumped into my throat. I answered with my sweetest voice. "Hi, honey. Change of plans," he said. "We're flying back earlier. We'll be home in about 2 hours. 2 hours. My hands went numb. "We're almost there," he added, and his voice took on that careful tone again. "Just keep doing what you've been doing. If anything changes with Evelyn, Brielle needs to know." I swallowed. "Of course." He paused like he was choosing words. "And Mom, nurses sometimes say things that can freak people out. But don't overreact. You hear me?" My stomach sank. That wasn't concern. That was control. He was warning me not to get influenced by Ms. Rivera. He was checking if I was still useful. I forced a small laugh. "I hear you," I said. "Everything's fine." "Good," Logan said. "See you soon." I hung up and stood there shaking. I went to Evelyn's room and leaned close, whispering, "They'll be home in 2 hours." Evelyn's eyes opened a crack. Her hand squeezed mine, weak but intentional. She whispered, "Ready." I swallowed. "Are we ready? Because I don't feel ready." Evelyn stared at me, eyes sharp even through sedation. "Catherine," she whispered, "they think you're harmless. They think you'll do whatever Logan tells you. Use that." My throat tightened. "I'll try." Evelyn whispered, "Act tired. Act overwhelmed. Ask questions. Make them explain. People confess when they think they're teaching." I nodded slowly. Then I heard tires in the driveway, the sound of car doors opening, suitcase wheels on the walkway, and my entire body went cold because I realized the scariest part of this wasn't the cameras or the paperwork. It was this: my own son was about to walk through that door thinking he was in control. And I was about to sit there and smile at him like I didn't know he'd planned me into someone else's nightmare. The front door opened. I heard Brielle's voice, bright and fake. "We're home." Footsteps in the hall. My heart hammered so hard it made my vision pulse. I walked out to the living room, forcing my face into the expression of a tired, worried, grateful mother. Logan stepped in first. He looked normal.polished.com. Brielle followed, looking refreshed like she'd been at a spa, not traveling. "How is she?" Logan asked immediately. I took a breath and played my role. "Quiet," I said. "Ms. Rivera came twice. She said Evelyn's heart rate was a little low and her oxygen dipped a bit. But she wasn't panicking." I watched Brielle's face carefully, and there it was, the tiniest flash of satisfaction. so quick most people wouldn't notice. Then she covered it with a worried look. "Oh no," she said softly. "That could be the beginning of decline." Logan's eyes flicked to Brielle like he was checking if she was sticking to the script. "Let's check on her," Brielle said. We walked to Evelyn's room. Evelyn lay still. Perfect performance. The monitor beeped. The oxygen machine hummed. Brielle went to the bedside and stroked Evelyn's hair with fake tenderness. "Hi, Mom," she whispered. "We're back." Logan stood beside her and put on his concerned face. If I didn't know the truth, I would have believed them. That's the scariest part. They were that good at acting when it suited them. Brielle turned to me. "Thank you for being here," she said. It's so important that she's surrounded by loving family. Loving family. My stomach twisted. I forced myself to ask, like a worried, clueless old woman, "What should I watch for, Miss?" Rivera mentioned changes, but I don't really know what's normal. Brielle's eyes gleamed just a little, like she liked being asked, like she liked being the expert. "Well," she said, "with brain injuries like hers, it can be stable for months. Then suddenly the body starts to fail. Breathing becomes labored, skin tone changes, heart rhythm gets irregular. It's tragic, but it's natural." Natural. Again with that word. Logan nodded, voice calm. "We just want her comfortable. No suffering." Brielle turned toward the med station and started checking bottles and labels. "I'm going to adjust her dosage tonight," she said casually. Based on what the nurse noted, my pulse spiked. This was the beginning. Logan looked at me like he was measuring me. "Mom, you look tired," he said. "You should probably go home and rest." My heart sank for a second because part of me wanted to leave. Part of me wanted to run out the door and pretend I never heard Evelyn's whisper. But Brielle cut in quickly, her voice sweet but firm. "Actually, maybe Catherine should stay tonight. Just in case. It'll help if the nurse has questions. Plus, family should be here together." The way she said it wasn't kindness. It was a decision. Logan's jaw tightened slightly, like he didn't love being told what to do. But he didn't argue. He just nodded. "Yeah," he said. "Stay tonight." I forced a small smile. "Of course," I said. "Whatever you need." Inside, I was shaking, because now the recorder in the living room mattered more than ever. Now the camera in Evelyn's room mattered. Now everything mattered. That night, they acted like nothing was wrong. But little cracks showed. Logan sat with his laptop open. Every time he thought I wasn't looking, he clicked through bank pages and travel confirmations. Brielle kept checking Evelyn's vitals with a seriousness that felt like theater. She wrote notes in a little chart folder, probably to build her trail. During dinner, Logan's phone buzzed. He smiled. Brielle leaned in. "Good news," Logan smirked. "Cruise line confirmed the upgrade," he said. "Penthouse suite." I gripped my fork so hard my fingers hurt. Brielle laughed softly. "We deserve it," she said. They were talking about celebrating while Evelyn lay in the next room. Later, around 9, Brielle stood up with that fake sad expression. "Time for her meds," she announced. She looked at me. "You might want to watch," she said, "in case you ever have to help again." Help again. Like she was training me. We went into Evelyn's room. Brielle washed her hands slowly, like she was performing cleanliness for the camera. Then she drew medication into a syringe from 2 little vials. "This one is for muscle relaxation," she said. "This one helps her sleep peacefully." Peacefully. She moved toward the forecourt. I held my breath. Logan leaned against the door frame, watching. "Everything good?" he asked. "Perfect," Brielle said. She injected it with calm hands. Then she disposed of the syringe like she'd done it 1,000 times. I forced myself to ask, voice shaky on purpose like a worried mother. "How long until it kicks in?" Brielle smiled. 10 minutes, she said. She'll be out deep until late morning. Logan nodded like that was exactly what he wanted. Back in the living room, Logan poured himself a drink. Brielle sat beside him, and then finally Logan's tone changed. He looked at me, not like a son looks at a mother, like a man looks at a tool. "Mom," he said, "we need to talk." He stood and walked to the window and pulled the curtains shut, cutting off the outside world. Brielle got up and stood next to him. My stomach dropped. Logan stared at me, eyes cold. "You understand what's happening here, right?" he asked. I forced my voice to wobble. "What do you mean?" Brielle's smile disappeared. "Don't do that," she said. "Don't act clueless." Logan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Evelyn is going to pass soon," he said, voice low and calm. "And you're going to help make sure nobody asks questions." My chest tightened. Even though I knew it was coming, hearing him say it out loud made me feel like I'd been punched. What are you saying?" I whispered. "I'm saying," Logan replied, "you've been here. You've seen her condition. When she goes, you're going to tell people she never woke up. She was peaceful. We were devoted. We did everything." Brielle's eyes were flat. "And if you're smart," she added, "you'll stick to that story." I forced myself to tremble, like I was scared and confused. "Logan, honey, I don't." He cut me off. "Mom," he said, voice suddenly sharp, "don't make this harder. You're 72. You live alone. Accidents happen to older people every day. Falls, break-ins. Stuff happens." My blood ran cold. Brielle leaned in, smiling like a shark. "We'd rather not have any accidents," she said sweetly. "So be family. Help us. And you'll be fine." I sat there frozen, acting stunned. Inside, I was screaming, because the recorder behind the plant was capturing everything. Every word, every threat, every confession. Logan stood and patted my shoulder like he was calming a child. "Take the night," he said, "but tomorrow, we start documenting the decline. We need you 100%. He smiled like it was normal. Then he and Brielle went to bed, and I sat there in the dark living room, staring at the closed curtains, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. I wanted to run. I wanted to bolt out the door and drive until my hands stopped trembling. But if I left, Evelyn would be dead. And if I left, Logan and Brielle could twist it. They could say I stole things. They could call me unstable. They could get ahead of the story. So I forced myself to stand, walk calmly to Evelyn's room, and close the door. I leaned close and whispered. They admitted it. They threatened me. Evelyn's eyes snapped open just a crack, and the look in them made my skin prickle. "Not fear. Focus," she whispered. "Good." Then she glanced toward the corner where the camera sat, and she whispered the sentence that made my heart stop. "They think they're about to win." And that's when I realized something. We weren't just collecting evidence anymore. We were in the most dangerous part. Because once people like Logan and Brielle say their plan out loud, they don't go backward. They go forward. And tomorrow morning, they were going to start the decline. And I was going to have to sit there, smile, and pretend to be their loyal witness, while praying the recordings were enough to save Evelyn's life. I barely slept that night. Every time the house creaked, I flinched. Every time the air vent clicked on, my heart jumped like it was footsteps. I kept thinking Logan was going to come back out and decide I was too risky to keep around. Or Brielle would check the cameras, see something in my face, and realize I wasn't the clueless old lady she'd written into her notebook. I laid there staring at the ceiling in the guest room, listening for any sound that didn't belong. And the worst part was the silence. Because silence in that house wasn't peace. It was the calm before something ugly. Around 5:30, I heard movement in the hallway. Soft footsteps. A door opening and closing. The faint clink of something glass against something metal. Brielle. She was already up. already moving like a person with a plan. I waited until the footsteps passed my door. Then I sat up slowly and put my feet on the floor. My hands were shaking so badly I had to press my palms against my knees to steady them. I got dressed in the same clothes I wore the day before, because changing into anything nicer felt wrong, like putting on lipstick for a funeral. Then I stepped into the hallway. Evelyn's door was cracked open. I could hear Brielle's voice, soft and sing-song, like she was humming to herself while she worked. That sound almost made me throw up, because it was so normal, so casual, like she was making coffee instead of prepping a person's slow decline. I walked into the kitchen first, because I needed to appear normal on camera. I poured myself a cup of coffee I didn't want and held it like a prop. Then Logan came out of the bedroom, looking rested.com, like he hadn't threatened his own mother the night before. "Morning," he said, and his voice was warm enough to fool strangers. "Morning," I replied, forcing my face into that tired, loyal mom expression. He studied me for a second. My stomach clenched. "You sleep okay?" he asked. I nodded and made my voice quiet and shaky, like I was still processing the shock. "Not really," I said. "This is a lot." Logan's mouth softened into something like satisfaction, like he loved hearing that I was scared. He walked closer and patted my shoulder, the same way you'd pat a dog you just trained. "It'll be okay," he said, "as long as we're on the same page." I swallowed. "We are." I lied. Logan nodded like that was exactly what he wanted. "Good," he said. "Brielle's already with Evelyn. Today we start tracking changes. The nurse might ask you questions, so just stick to the story. You've been here. You've seen her condition. It's been stable, but now it's changing. The story. The script." I nodded again, forcing my eyes to look watery. "Okay," I whispered. Logan squeezed my shoulder. "Good girl," he said. That phrase lit a fire in my chest so hot it almost broke my mask. But I didn't react. I just sipped my coffee and stared at the floor like a scared old woman, because the recorder in the living room was still going, and the recorder in Evelyn's room was still going, and I needed them to keep talking. A few minutes later, Brielle came into the kitchen holding a chart folder like she was a real nurse. Her face was ranged into worry. "Catherine," she said softly, "I'm concerned." My stomach twisted, but I played along. "What is it?" Brielle sighed dramatically. "Evelyn's breathing seems more labored," she said, "and her color looks off. I'm afraid we're seeing the beginning of the decline the doctors warned us about." She said it like she was reading from her own notebook, like she'd rehearsed this line in the mirror. Logan put on his concerned face. "That fast?" he asked. Brielle nodded. "It happens," she whispered. "It's heartbreaking." I forced myself to look shaken. "Should we call the nurse?" I asked. Brielle smiled slightly, like she liked that question. "I already called Ms. Rivera," she said. "I asked her to come earlier today for a reassessment." Logan nodded like that was perfect. "Good," he said. "We need documentation. We need documentation." My hands clenched around the coffee mug. Brielle turned to me. "When Ms. Rivera comes," she said, "you might need to confirm what you've noticed. You've been here with her, Catherine. You can say she's been quieter, breathing more shallow. It'll help if everyone agrees on the changes." I nodded slowly, like I was absorbing instructions. Inside, I felt sick. They weren't just planning the decline. They were building a choir of witnesses to sing their story, and they wanted me as the lead singer. Brielle went back to Evelyn's room, and Logan sat at the dining table with his laptop open. I walked down the hallway and peeked into Evelyn's room like I was checking on her. Brielle was at the bedside adjusting tubing and writing notes with slow, deliberate movements, like she wanted the camera to see everything. Evelyn lay still, but her breathing looked slightly heavier than before, and I knew why. Brielle's meds. I stepped closer, keeping my face neutral. Brielle glanced at me and smiled softly. "See," she whispered. "It's starting." I looked at Evelyn and felt my throat tighten. Then I reached down and gently took Evelyn's hand like a loving family member. Under the blanket, her fingers pressed lightly against mine. One squeeze. She was awake inside, holding on. I leaned close as if I was whispering comforting words. But what I really whispered was, "We got it. We recorded last night. Hang on." Evelyn's fingers pressed again. A tiny tap. I backed away and walked out, forcing myself to move slowly so I didn't look frantic. Back in the kitchen, Logan was typing fast. I caught glimpses of bank pages and travel confirmations on his screen. A cruise booking. A payment schedule. He noticed me looking and immediately clicked to another tab like a teenager caught doing something shady. "Everything all right?" he asked casually. "Just worried," I said softly. Logan gave a little sigh like a man suffering nobly. "Me too," he said, "but sometimes you can't stop what's coming." That sentence chilled me because it wasn't sadness. It was acceptance. Like he'd already decided. Around noon, Brielle made another show of worry. "She's getting worse," she said, walking into the living room with the chart. "I'm going to document her respirations and color every hour." Logan nodded. "Do it," he said. "If we have to answer questions later, we need a timeline." Answer questions later. Not save her. Not help her. Just cover themselves. Brielle sat across from me on the couch and lowered her voice, like she was sharing a burden. "Catherine," she whispered, "I know this is hard, but I want you to understand. It's a blessing in a way. Evelyn's mind is already gone. Her body is just catching up." I forced myself not to flinch. "That's so sad," I whispered. Brielle's eyes stayed cold. "It is," she said, "but it's also mercy." Mercy. That word almost made me laugh. But nothing about this was funny. A little after 1, the doorbell rang. Ms. Rivera. My heart jumped. This was the part where someone might notice too much. Brielle opened the door with her best exhausted daughter face. "Thank you for coming," she said, voice trembling like she was barely holding it together. "I'm really worried, Miss." Rivera stepped inside, professional and calm. "Let's take a look," she said. We walked to Evelyn's room. Ms. Rivera checked the monitor, listened to breathing, examined skin. Her brow furrowed. My stomach dropped. "Oxygen saturation is lower than yesterday, Ms. Rivera said, and her heart rhythm is more irregular." Brielle did a little sobbing sound. "Oh God," she whispered. I knew it. Ms. Rivera glanced at the chart. "What meds has she received since my last visit?" she asked. Brielle answered smoothly. "Only what's prescribed." I followed the plan. Ms. Rivera looked at Evelyn's arms again. My throat tightened. She touched a faint bruise near an injection site. "This looks new, Ms. Rivera said. Brielle didn't miss a beat. "We had to reposition her multiple times," she said. "She bruises easily, Ms." Rivera's eyes flicked to me. "Catherine," she said kindly, "have you seen any additional medication administered?" My mouth went dry. This was a trap without Ms. Rivera even realizing it. If I told the truth right now, with Logan and Brielle standing there, they'd flip it. They'd claim I was confused. They might hurt Evelyn faster. If I lied, I was feeding the story. So I did what Evelyn told me to do. I did what the plan demanded. I acted like a scared old woman unsure of herself. I only followed the fridge schedule. I said softly, "Brielle handles the injections." Brielle's head snapped toward me for a split second, sharp. Then she smiled again, like nothing happened. Ms. Rivera nodded slowly, thinking, "I'm going to document these changes and call the supervising physician to review the med list." she said. If this decline continues, you might need to consider transferring her back to a facility. Brielle clasped her hands together like she was praying. Whatever you recommend, she whispered, voice full of fake grief. When Ms. Rivera left, Brielle's sweet face dropped the second the door shut. Her eyes went hard. She turned to Logan. She noticed the bruising. Brielle muttered. Logan's jaw clenched. Doesn't matter, he said quietly. We stick to the timeline. I stood there pretending to be shaken, but inside I was terrified, because that right there was an almost caught moment. An almost caught can make dangerous people move faster. That evening, Logan poured himself a drink again. Brielle made tea. They sat on the couch like a couple winding down after a long day. And for a second, if you didn't know, it would look normal. Then Logan said, casual as anything, if she goes tonight, it'll be cleaner. Cleaner. Brielle nodded. I was thinking the same, she said. The longer we stretch it, the more questions. Questions. They were talking about Evelyn's life like it was paperwork. I sat in the chair across from them, holding my hands together so tightly my knuckles hurt. I forced myself to speak because Evelyn said, make them explain, make them talk. So, what happens if she gets worse fast? I asked, voice trembling on purpose. I mean, what do we do? Brielle turned toward me with that patient teacher voice. We document, she said. We keep her comfortable. We call for help if needed. But these things, they happen. Logan leaned forward. And yo, he said, eyes locked on me, you tell the truth about what you saw. That we were here. That we did everything. My stomach twisted. Brielle added softly, you're part of this now. Catherine. Family. Family. That word made me feel dirty. At around 8:30, Brielle stood up and said the sentence I'd been dreading. It's time for her evening meds, she said, voice quiet and solemn like a priest. Logan nodded. This might be the night, he murmured. Brielle looked at me. I want you to come with me, she said, so you can see, so you understand. Translation, so you can't claim you didn't witness it. We walked into Evelyn's room. The recorder was hidden behind the tissue box. The camera dot watched from the corner. Brielle washed her hands slowly, deliberately. She pulled out 2 vials and a syringe. She measured with careful precision, and she spoke in that calm medical tone, like she was trying to convince herself she was doing something professional. This one helps her relax, she said. This one eases her breathing. Eases her breathing. That's not what it was doing. It was suppressing it. She drew the liquid into the syringe, tapped out air bubbles, and looked at Evelyn like she was nothing. Then she turned to me. You okay? Brielle asked, voice almost gentle. I forced myself to nod, eyes watery. Brielle moved toward the IV port. This was it. This was the moment where the evidence would either save Evelyn or we'd lose her. My heart was pounding so hard I felt lightheaded. Then, at the doorway, Logan stepped in and said quietly, do it. My blood ran cold. Brielle lifted the syringe, and something inside me snapped into focus. Evelyn had told me, they need to confess. We need the nail. We had it. We had the threats. We had the plan. We had Brielle's notebook. We had Logan's cleaner comment. Now we needed the move. I forced myself to speak, loud enough to break the moment, but not loud enough to trigger panic. Wait, I said. Brielle froze with the syringe in her hand. Logan's eyes flicked to me. Sharp. What? Brielle asked, annoyance flashing under her calm. I swallowed and forced my voice to tremble. I said, stepping closer to Evelyn's bed. I want to say goodbye. If this is really the night, I just want a minute. Logan studied me like he was trying to decide if I was stalling. Then his face softened into fake kindness. Go ahead, he said. Take your time. Brielle rolled her eyes slightly, but stepped back. I leaned down over Evelyn like I was whispering comfort. My mouth was near her ear, and I whispered one word. Now. Evelyn's eyes snapped open. Not fluttering. Not slowly open. Brielle screamed. The syringe slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor, liquid spilling across the tile. Logan stumbled backward like he'd been punched. Evelyn sat up, and for a second the whole room looked like a glitch in reality. Because she wasn't supposed to move. She wasn't supposed to speak. But she did. Put your hands where I can see them, Evelyn said, voice rough but clear. Brielle's face went white. This is impossible, she stammered. You're in a coma. Evelyn cut her off. I've been awake longer than you think, she said. Long enough to hear you call me a subject. Long enough to hear you plan your cruise. Logan's face twisted into rage. You're confused, he snapped. You're having an episode. Evelyn's eyes turned to him, sharp as glass. Am I? She said. Then Evelyn reached toward the bedside table and grabbed the small recorder. She held it up, and she pressed play. The room filled with Logan's own voice from the living room the night before. Accidents happen to older people every day. Falls dot break dash-ins. Stuff happens. Then Brielle's voice. We'd rather not have any accidents. So be family. Help us. Then Logan again. If she goes tonight, it'll be cleaner. Logan's face drained of color. Brielle's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Evelyn's voice was steady, almost calm. That's just one recording, she said. I have more. And Catherine has photos. Of the safe. Of the notebook. Of the bank transfers. Logan's eyes snapped toward me, and the look he gave me wasn't my son's look. It was a stranger's look. Betrayal and hate. Mom, he breathed, like he couldn't believe it. Before he could move, a loud pounding shook the front door. Police, open the door. Brielle flinched so hard she nearly fell. Logan froze like his body forgot how to run. Evelyn looked at them both. They've been waiting, she said. Not outside all day, don't flatter yourselves. But Catherine sent the recordings and photos earlier through a secure link. Ms. Rivera's documentation helped too. Once you threatened Catherine and started talking about cleaner, it moved fast. That's when it clicked for me what Evelyn had done. She'd had a plan. Not spy movie perfect timing, but a real-world plan. Gather evidence, get it out of the house, then wait for them to expose themselves. And they did. The pounding came again. Open the door now. Logan lunged forward like he was going to grab the recorder. I stepped back instinctively, and Evelyn's voice snapped, loud and commanding. Don't. Logan hesitated. Then the front door burst open, and officers flooded into the house. Everything happened fast after that. Commands. Hands up. Don't move. Logan tried to speak like he was innocent. Officer, there's been a misunderstanding. Brielle started crying, fake sobs like she could act her way out. She's confused. She's brain injured. Evelyn pointed at Brielle. She injected me, Evelyn said. Check the med bag. Check the vials. Check my blood. One officer looked at the syringe on the floor and the spill and immediately called for paramedics. Another officer cuffed Logan. Another cuffed Brielle. Logan twisted and looked straight at me while the cuffs clicked around his wrists. Mom, he hissed, voice shaking with rage. How could you do this to me? And that was the moment I knew, deep in my bones, that I hadn't done anything to him. He'd done it to himself. I looked at him and felt something I never expected to feel about my own child. Nothing. No guilt. No softening. No urge to explain. Just emptiness where love used to sit. You did this, I said quietly. I just stopped covering for you. Brielle tried to lunge toward Evelyn, still screaming. You ruined everything. The officers held her back. Evelyn sat there, breathing hard, shaking from adrenaline, but alive. Alive. Paramedics arrived, checked Evelyn, asked questions. Evelyn answered clearly. She told them about the injections, about the sedation, about the timing. Miss Rivera arrived not long after called in when officers contacted home health. She looked stunned, then horrified, then angry. I knew something felt off, she muttered, staring at the bruises, the marks, the equipment. One of the officers asked me gently, "Ma'am, are you Catherine?" I nodded, still shaking. He said, "You did the right thing." I almost laughed at the simplicity of that sentence, because nothing about this felt right. It felt like my entire life had been flipped inside out. After Logan and Brielle were let out in cuffs, the house went quiet again. But this time it wasn't empty quiet. It was aftermath quiet. Evelyn and I sat at the kitchen table later, wrapped in blankets. Someone had made us tea. I couldn't even remember who. My hands were still trembling, like my body didn't trust calm. Evelyn stared at the steam rising from her mug and let out a long breath. "I thought I was going to die in that bed," she said quietly. My throat tightened. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." Evelyn looked at me, eyes tired but warm. "Catherine," she said, "you did see it. Your gut knew. They just trained you not to listen." That hit me hard, because it was true. Logan had trained me for years to accept distance, accept half-truths, accept whatever story kept things smooth. Smooth. That's how monsters hide in families. They don't show you the teeth at first. They show you busy. They show you stress. They show you don't make it weird. Until one day, you realize you've been swallowing discomfort so long you forgot what peace feels like. Evelyn squeezed my hand. "Thank you," she said softly. "You saved me." I swallowed hard. "You saved me too," I admitted. Because if Logan and Brielle had gone through with it, my life would have been over anyway. Either from guilt or from being the next accident. A little later, an investigator came by and asked Evelyn questions. He explained what would happen next: restraining orders, financial audits, charges. He said the money trail looked ugly. He said the notebook and recordings were strong evidence of intent. He said Ms. Rivera's documentation would matter because it showed changes inconsistent with unnatural coma progression. When he left, Evelyn leaned back in the chair like she'd run a marathon. "What happens to them?" I asked quietly. Evelyn's voice was calm, but there was steel under it. "They face consequences," she said. "Fraud, elder abuse, theft, attempted homicide, and if the state gets aggressive, they'll stack it high." I stared at the table. Logan, my son. A name that used to mean school lunches and scraped knees and Christmas mornings. Now it meant handcuffs. Evelyn watched me for a second, then said gently, "You're allowed to grieve him, Catherine. Even if he's alive, you're allowed to grieve who you thought he was." That made my eyes sting, because that was the real heartbreak. Not losing the man in cuffs. Losing the boy I thought I raised. Weeks later, the house was no longer theirs. The investigation meant it turned into a crime scene. Then paperwork. Then a place nobody wanted to claim. Evelyn moved into a rehab facility for a while to recover from the sedation and muscle weakness. She worked hard. She was stubborn in the best way. Every day she got stronger. And I visited her. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because in the middle of all that betrayal, Evelyn had become something I didn't expect. A friend. One afternoon, sitting in the facility garden, Evelyn looked at me and said, "So what now, Catherine?" I surprised myself with the answer. "Now I live," I said. "I stopped begging for love from people who only know how to use me." Evelyn smiled. "Good," she said, "because you're too old to waste any more time." That made me laugh, an actual laugh, for the first time in what felt like forever. A few months later, Evelyn got her money back through legal freezes and recovered accounts. Not all of it, but enough. The important part was stopping the bleeding and stopping them from taking more. She sold her Boston house herself on her terms and used part of that money to set up protection. Lawyers. Trusts. Oversight. No more oops. We forged it. And me? I moved to not far, but enough. I changed my routines. I got stronger locks. I stopped living like I needed permission to be safe. I also stopped answering calls from unknown numbers. That sounds small, but after what happened, small safety things felt huge. Sometimes at night, I still hear Logan's voice in my head saying, accidents happen. But now, when I hear it, I don't feel scared the way I did at first. I feel clear because I know what he is. And I know what I am now. Not a prop, not a witness, not a convenient old woman people can write into their plans because they assume she'll stay quiet. I'm Catherine, and I learned way too late, but still in time that peace isn't keeping the family together at all costs. Peace is telling the truth, even when the truth burns. Now, I want to ask you something, because I always wonder what other people would do. If you were in my place, if you found out your own child was capable of something like that, would you have stayed and played along to get proof? Or would you have run the second you realized what was happening? And if you've ever been used by family, if you've ever been made to feel like your job was to stay quiet to keep things smooth, I want you to know something. You're not crazy. Your gut was talking. You were just trained to ignore it. Thanks for listening all the way through. And just so it's clear, this is original fiction written for narration and voiced with an AI female voiceover.